Hi guys, Rachael Cook, Doctor of Audiology at Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona. And in today's video, you and I are going to be watching one of my new favorite TED Talks together. Coming up. Now we all know and love TED Talks, and you know what they are. They're these 10 to 20 minute breakdowns of fascinating topics and personal stories from the leading experts in the industry who've lived it. Now you can learn just about anything in these TED Talks, and recently there have been more and more TED Talks in the hearing healthcare space. These include talks from Dr. Angela Alexander about auditory processing disorder, talks from Dr. Kristen Berry about tinnitus, and many more. Well, the most recent TED Talk in the hearing healthcare space is a talk by Dr. Juliette Sterkens titled "What You Don't Know About Hearing Aids," and you definitely have to watch it for yourself. In her talk, Juliette Sterkens, a retired audiologist and the current hearing loop advocate for the Hearing Loss Association of America, talks about how hearing aids alone might not be enough and where hearing assistive technology might step in to save the day. Now, I do strongly encourage you to go check out the entire TED Talk for yourself, and don't worry, we will make sure that there is a link down in the description below. But I figured today we could walk through this TED Talk together and I could show you some of my favorite parts because it is fantastic. But before we dive in, if you could please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up, it really helps bring videos like these to a wider audience. And while you're at it, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button with notification bell so that you never miss any one of our newly released videos. We really appreciate it, and with that, let's dive in.
Hearing loss due to aging and noise exposure changes how we understand speech. And it causes words that sound similar, like zip and sip, wake and lake, mad and dad and bad, to sound the same, especially when there's background of noise. And as unintuitive as it may be, loud sounds can become unbearable loud, distortingly loud. Hearing loss is a complex problem.
Whew, I'm glad someone else said it. Hearing loss most definitely is a complex problem. Depending on the type and the level of your hearing loss, this can impact just which sounds are able to make it from your ears up to your brain. A couple of the most common kinds of hearing loss are age-related hearing loss or noise-induced hearing loss, both of which tend to impact your ability to hear high-frequency sounds. The sounds that typically fall in the high-frequency region are high-pitch consonant sounds, and these sounds are really critical to getting clarity and distinction out of speech. Now, I'm definitely of the belief that any hearing loss is definitely worth treating. So let's see what else she has to say.
You know people who, even wearing hearing aids, still have to have the TV volume up, always watch TV with subtitles, frequently ask everybody to repeat that. Would you please repeat that? Aren't hearing aids supposed to solve these problems?
That's a fantastic question, and I know she's about to head to an answer, so I won't take her thunder away.
They still don't work the way we hope they would. And how can they? Hearing aids can't make hearing normal. They're good at making sound louder, but they can't always make the speech clearer, especially when the inner ear and the hearing nerve are affected.
In many other fields or many other specialties, when you have a loss of vision, typically you get fit with some glasses and that corrects the problem. Maybe you have high blood pressure and you start taking a medication that will help to lower your blood pressure. There's these really quick fixes in other healthcare industries, and for that reason, why wouldn't hearing aids be the perfect fix for hearing loss? Well, in many cases, they are. In fact, in the overwhelming majority of different types and configurations of hearing loss, hearing aids are an appropriate treatment solution. But she brings up a great point, and that point is that hearing aids cannot repair a damaged auditory system. Even with top-of-the-line hearing aids that are programmed perfectly to a T by a provider who follows comprehensive best practices, you still might find that certain environments continue to be challenging for you. Here are perhaps some reasons why.
And hearing aid microphones have a limited effective range of about 4 or 5 arm's lengths. And hearing the world through these tiny hearing aid microphones reduces our exquisite three-dimensional hearing ability down to one dimension. Consequently, hearing aids cannot improve the clarity of the sounds we want to hear relative to the sounds we don't want to hear beyond that critical microphone distance, something that normal hearing ears accomplish effortlessly.
It's true. While hearing aids have continued to improve leaps and bounds over the last few decades, they're not always a perfect or a complete solution. In most instances, hearing aids can be programmed in a way to where they provide an incredible amount of benefit in quiet and more controlled situations. But in those more challenging listening environments, think restaurants and conference halls and places like that, hearing aids alone may not be enough to really sift through all of that noise like normal hearing ears can, just like she alluded to. But let's continue.
Additional Bluetooth accessories can be purchased to make hearing over distance possible. So a small TV transmitter can send sound from the TV direct into hearing aids, and wireless microphone accessories can be added to improve hearing under those noisy situations.
I'm so glad that there is someone out there that is talking about how great hearing assistive technology can actually be. Assistive listening devices aren't available for all makes and models of hearing aids, but they are available for a large majority of them, and they can absolutely level up your hearing aid performance. Typically, these assistive listening devices are used in only the most challenging types of environments, but they can make such a difference when it comes to not only hearing, but hearing well and understanding what is being said in these environments that are just, for lack of a better word, crazy. For me, the biggest problem with assistive listening devices is the fact that more people either don't know what they are or aren't using them consistently. Because when used correctly, they can make all of the difference in the world. But assistive listening devices aren't the only thing that can make it easier to navigate challenging communication environments.
You don't need any technology at all, but simply being considerate of one another. If you know that hearing aids don't restore hearing to normal, don't speak from the other room.
Sound familiar? I love that she highlights communication strategies here, and that's what we typically refer to them as in the world of audiology. Communication strategies, aka strategies that either a speaker or a listener can use to make sure that their message is well understood. Oftentimes when we're talking about hearing treatment, there's a really big emphasis that's placed on hearing aids and hearing devices. Maybe a discussion that's had about assistive listening devices and how those can make your hearing aid performance so much better. But I think that we always forget the most easy and effective and even cheapest solution out there, which is being considerate of one another truthfully. Now, there are a lot of resources out there about effective communication strategies, and in fact, I've made a couple of videos about them from each perspective, the listener's perspective and the speaker's perspective, and these will be linked down in the description below if you want to check these videos out or send them to someone that you feel might need to use them. One of the communication strategies that she goes on to recommend is just getting closer to the source, right? Moving closer to the thing that you want to hear and hear well. But she points out that in a lot of these large or more challenging listening environments, that's not always feasible. For example, take a large auditorium with a bunch of college students that are just trying to learn during a lecture, perhaps a church event, or even a theater or a play. You can't possibly go move your chair up to the middle of the stage where this play is taking place, right? And that is why she goes on to explain some of the public assistive listening technologies that can really help you hear better in these more difficult listening environments.
Especially help them hear in public venues using these assistive listening systems. That's made easier if their hearing aid includes what is called a telecoil. It's a tiny antenna that comes to the consumer at little or no cost. And when that telecoil is turned on, generally it requires a push of a button, it will receive signals that are broadcast by a hearing loop system.
So I'm so glad that she's talking about telecoil systems because they are really super cool. The use of a telecoil is another form of an assistive listening technology that is more available in kind of public types of venues. Like she said, either with a push of a button or through the tap of a button on your compatible smartphone app, you can be connected in to this hearing induction loop or audio induction loop, which really just takes the sound from the source, aka the microphone or microphones up on the stage, and sends that audio directly into your hearing aids. That way, the sound is not compromised by distance from the source or by reverberation from poor acoustics. Telecoils and hearing induction loops can make it so much easier for you to hear and hear well in these large public venues like classrooms, auditoriums, churches, and theaters, even live theaters and movie theaters. Now, I know that they sound amazing, and you might be wondering to yourself, hey, wait a minute, I have had hearing aids for a while and I've never heard of this, or I have hearing aids right now. How can I get this technology? Not so fast.
That little telecoil is already in the hearing aid, but the consumer is unaware because their audiologist may not have activated that feature in the computer and not explained what that little telecoil is for, or worse, there's no telecoil in the hearing aid because it wasn't recommended at the time of purchase.
She makes a lot of great points here. And the first is that not every hearing aid has a telecoil inside of it. You just saw that graphic of the telecoil itself, and that telecoil takes up space inside of a hearing aid. And for that reason, oftentimes the telecoil gets booted in order to provide a smaller or more discrete sized hearing aid. But does that mean that the telecoil should get booted out for size concerns every single time? In my opinion, no. You can order hearing aids both with and without telecoils. So it really should be a discussion between you and your provider on whether or not you could benefit from the use of having a telecoil in your hearing aids. But unfortunately, she's totally right. Oftentimes this discussion never happens, which means that individuals who could benefit from using this incredible technology don't even know that it exists. Or like she said, worse yet, they know it exists, but their hearing aids don't have a telecoil in them. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you've probably heard the term best practices thrown around a lot. Comprehensive best practices really is just a laundry list of procedures and considerations when it comes to fitting hearing aids to ensure that you obtain the maximum amount of benefit possible. One of the first components in following comprehensive best practice care is a listening needs assessment. There are many different types of needs assessments out there, but the idea is that your provider should be asking some questions about your life and your lifestyle and the dynamic that you live in and where you live and who you live with and the things that you like to do so that they know what your hearing aids need to have inside of them. For example, in our clinic, we use a listening needs assessment that has a question on there that talks about how often are you visiting large public venues, like theaters, like conference rooms, like auditoriums. Now, the patient has the opportunity to respond never, sometimes, or pretty frequently, and regardless of their answer, I am still going to let them know that I'm using this question to qualify whether or not a telecoil in their hearing aids is necessary. Just because there's a feature in the hearing aids that you might not need right now, you got to remember that your hearing aids, as long as they're cleaned and maintained and kept up with over the years, should last you somewhere in the realm of 5 to 7 years. To me, that means that you might not need a telecoil now, but you might need one later. Now, of course, it's up to each individual person to determine what their top priorities are when it comes to hearing treatment. For many individuals, size and discreteness of their hearing aids is one of their top priorities or goals. And in that situation, that might be a moment where we get a device that doesn't have telecoil compatibility in it. But I will also say that far too often I see individuals with hearing aids that do not have a telecoil in them. And just in 5 minutes of meeting them and talking to them, I'm shocked that they don't have a telecoil because they go to all of those challenging listening situations and environments all of the time. So they definitely should have had that in their hearing aids. And if you're wondering if it makes a big difference or not, why don't you just see for yourself?
And why telecoils are so beneficial will hopefully become clear when you hear this next audio recording. This historic 140-year-old theater has had a hearing loop installed for over a decade. And if you're sitting in the audience and you are wearing hearing aids, and this is news to you, now is the time to turn on the telecoil in your hearing aids so you can hear for yourself. You'll be hearing a recording. The first part, you'll hear as if you're hearing through a hearing aid, with the hearing aid set to microphone, followed by a recording as if you were using a hearing aid with the instrument set to telecoil. Let's listen.
You know, we all want to live a long life. We apparently just don't want to get old in order to get there. We're sitting there and our young people in their 20s and 30s and 40s making fun of older people, making cracks about older people.
Isn't that insane? When it comes down to it, telecoils are really just allowing you access to direct audio input, which means, again, that sound doesn't have to travel to your hearing aid microphones, but rather it's wirelessly streamed right into your devices. I can nearly guarantee that every single person that listens to those two passages would agree that the second passage was obviously much, much clearer and easier to understand. But perhaps the biggest problem with these audio induction loops, other than the fact that a lot of times some providers aren't telling their patients that telecoils could be helpful for them, is the fact that there aren't necessarily a ton of hearing loops in the United States. Dr. Sterkens does go on to talk about how hearing loops and audio induction loops are much more common to find in Europe than they are in the United States. But the lack of hearing loops in the United States definitely lit Dr. Sterkens' fire. In fact, she led the charge in her state of Wisconsin to take the state from nearly 24 hearing loops in 2011 to nearly 900 hearing loops by the fall of 2023. That is incredible. She goes on to share a really incredible personal story about one of her patients who had a really hard time hearing in church, and then as soon as she got him set up with devices that had a telecoil in them, he had an amazing time at his church services. And I know you won't be able to see him on camera, but stories like these always give me little goosebumps because they're just so heartwarming and endearing, and a perfect example of when a professional really has this fire lit within them to lead the charge for advocacy and make change in their state. Now, the rest of the talk really does center around telecoil technology, and again, I think that is absolutely amazing. I did want to bring up the fact, though, that this type of listening experience is still very much so achievable by using other types of assistive listening devices like the remote microphone systems or even tabletop microphone systems that she alluded to earlier in her talk. That being said, I don't want you to worry if your current hearing aids don't presently have a telecoil in them, because chances are there are other types of accessory devices that could help give you some improvement. What Dr. Sterkens is pointing out in this TED Talk is so important, and that is the idea that limitations from damage to your own auditory system combined with limitations on modern hearing aids can make certain environments incredibly challenging to hear well in. But that doesn't have to be the end of it. If you're struggling to hear in difficult or more challenging listening situations, or even in the more simple listening situations, please be sure to talk to your provider about accessories and assistive listening devices that could make these types of environments so much easier for you. I feel as though assistive listening devices never ever get the spotlight when it comes to discussions about hearing aids and hearing treatment and hearing loss, and I am just so happy to see such an amazing TED Talk front and center on YouTube talking about these incredible, incredible devices. Again, make sure you check out the entire talk for yourself because it is amazing and you absolutely will not want to miss it. And if you're interested in finding a provider who follows comprehensive best practices and who should be including a discussion about hearing assistive technology with every single patient that comes in the door, make sure you check out hearingup.com. Each provider on hearingup.com has been personally vetted and is committed to following comprehensive audiologic best practices with each one of their patients. If you'd like to find a best practice provider near you, make sure you head over to hearingup.com and hit the Find a Provider tab to enter in your zip code and see providers near you. That's it for this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and share it with someone that you feel could use it. And if you haven't subscribed already, what are you doing? Make sure that you hit that subscribe button with notification bell so that you never miss any one of our newly released videos.